Hi, everyone. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here. My name is Ramesh Sundarajan. I'm the CEO of Jaam Communications. It's a great topic, and that's what actually we do. We help companies accelerate the tech stack. We offer technology solutions to the product companies. So we have clients across Atlanta, in US, as well as abroad. So I'm going to start with, would you like to introduce Ravi?
Sure. Hi. First of all, it's very exciting to be here. My first time attending a TiE meeting, and it's nice to interact with folks here. I've known some of you from before, and excited to meet more. I'm the CEO of Cantaloupe Inc. We are a public company listed on NASDAQ, and we are in the process of disrupting commerce and making more and more of it self-service. So we build technology that goes into automated vending machines, parking, laundromats, car wash, dog wash, anything where you can buy a product or a service and not have a store clerk or anybody help you do it, including a massage chair sitting in an airport, grab, scan, and go bistros with kiosks. All that is what we do. Needless to say, we've had our own pains with accelerating tech stack, and I'm excited about this topic.
Thank you, Ravi. Jay.
Hey guys, great to meet everybody. My name is Deuskar, co-founder and CTO of PrizePicks. We are the largest daily fantasy sports operator in North America. It's basically a real money prediction game around your favorite players that are playing real world events today or tonight, right? And so started it about 6 years ago with my co-founder Adam Wexler. It's been a crazy trajectory, especially through COVID when sports went away for that small period where we really had to figure out how to survive. But fast forward to now, I think we just crossed 300 employees. We're headquartered here in Atlanta, just moved into a large space in Midtown. So very exciting time for us, and looking to continue to grow this year and hopefully in the years beyond. So great to be here.
Thank you, Jay. So starting off with Ravi, and so you've had a phenomenal career, 20 plus years in technology. So you've led product teams, development teams, architecture, and you've been a CTO of Bucked, and then CTO and head of innovation at Bucked, and then moved on to COO of Cantaloupe, and then became a CEO. And so just for your information, everyone, right? I don't know how many people know about Cantaloupe. Cantaloupe has a market cap of $500 million company, and they have a revenue of 200 million plus. And then congratulations on your record profit of 176% year over year. So the question to you is, you've held multiple roles, technology roles, and moved on to operations and then heading a big company. So what are the challenges in the leadership perspective, and what are the challenges in leadership, and also which role do you think is kind of very challenging?
Well, I like to think my current role is the most challenging one. I'm sure Tim here agrees with me. I think the biggest challenge is with getting satisfied and getting complacent. So, I'm hungrier than I was 10 years ago, but not as hungry as I will be 10 years later. So that's how I do it.
Sure, yeah. So, you became a CEO, and you've led multiple technology teams and things like that. So what do you think, you sit on a CEO chair and you talk about tech stack acceleration, right? So what would you tell your CTO and from the tech stack acceleration perspective, or building a roadmap, right, from the tech stack acceleration for Cantaloupe?
Yeah, so and I'll piggyback where Tim was going with AI, and because I think it's very instructive on how something becomes the thing that everybody talks about in technology, right? And unfortunately for AI, it has been there before. I remember as a kid in grade school when AI was the hottest technology that was going to be in everything and change the whole world. And I was coding in Prolog and Lisp. My brother and I were geeky, and we were trying to hack video games by writing programs, right? And then it sort of fizzled out. It had happened in the 70s, it happened in the 90s, it happened in the early 2000s. So you go, well, what's different this time? Because AI is the only technology. ERPs haven't had that, cloud computing hasn't had that. So why is it that, what's really different and why is it really going to be an accelerant this time? Well, if you think about our mental functions as logic, reason, intellect, right, consciousness, so you're going there, and reasoning, this is the first time reasoning has come into the picture. DeepMind wasn't that, Watson wasn't that, the previous generations wasn't that. It was logic, algorithmic, it was inference-based, but it was largely, it was programmatic, it was algorithmic. There was no reasoning. ChatGPT is the first AI that hallucinates. And by the way, hallucination is a technical term, if you hadn't heard that, right? So it is, it really is. So back to your question about this, when I talk to my CTO, the way I express this is now, a lot of evolution has happened, but because now you've got a tool that can reason, and that totally changes the game in terms of the places that it can be applied. My message is let's get on our horses because it is going to change faster than any of us have seen anything else change. And by the way, the good news is, as a CEO, I don't have to go push people. When I got on an all hands and I said, guys, pay attention to ChatGPT, it's going to change the world and you better be using it, guess what I found? Everybody was already doing it. 80% of my engineers were already using it to write code. They just weren't telling me. Our marketing department was already doing press releases using, ChatGPT. And the worst example or the best example I found was that our legal team was doing contracts using ChatGPT, and suddenly their turnaround times were great. Everybody was like, the legal team is great. They're turning around my contracts so quickly. I was like, what's happening here? This is ChatGPT. So that's a short answer for you.
So quick question on that, right? So there's like a lot of rumors going around. Okay, is ChatGPT is going to replace the humans, right? Or a percentage of humans, right? Is it going to replace?
So I'll give you my perspective. Would love to hear Jay's also, but I think consciousness is the key, right? We human beings don't just have a mind, we have a heart, and there's a moral compass that comes with the heart. AI doesn't have that. And when I look at it, AI would not be conscious until that bridge is crossed. So right now I view it as, hey, you went from logic and only logic to logic plus reason, right? But not yet conscious and don't have feelings and emotions yet, thank heavens.
So moving on to Jay. Jay, so you co-founded a couple of companies before PrizePicks, right? So you started off with your career as a software developer and then moved on to co-found a couple of companies. And then right now, you're the co-founder and CTO of PrizePicks, right? I know you played like multiple roles. Obviously, whatever the role you're heading is a very challenging role as well. So how do you, what would you say is a roadmap as a part of tech stack acceleration for PrizePicks?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, so it's obviously changed depending on where we were in the life cycle of the company. In the early days, it was get out as much functionality as we could as quickly as possible to try to find product market fit and feel comfortable with, the thesis that we had, which is there isn't a simple casual game for the casual sports fan to hop in and out, have, that much more skin in the game. You guys have probably heard the names DraftKings and FanDuel, who've largely been popularized over the last decade. And I think our thesis was always, it's a game that only appeals to a very small subset of people, basically poker players or people who know how to run optimizers on Excel. And so the common complaint against those platforms was 98% of the money is won by 2% of the people. People were just getting beat down and sick and tired of losing. So going back to your question, Ramesh, I think like in the early days, it was crank as much functionality as we could out as quickly as possible. And obviously we made some trade-offs to get to product market fit as quickly as possible. Now I think, fast forward to now, I think in terms of roadmap for tech stack acceleration, we're investing very heavily into DevOps infrastructure as we have to. Since we're a B2C platform and we've grown to the scale that we're at, we have to be up all the time, especially in the run-ups to large events like the Super Bowl or football, when we'll have tens of thousands of people trying to get in the last second, trying to get their action down. So huge investment in DevOps infrastructure, splitting out our kind of monolithic services into service-oriented, architecture, and having small services kind of function for different parts of the platform. And largely, it's just it started out with a simple prediction game, and now it's evolved into this massive platform where we've got dashboards for our internal team to run their operations. We've got tools for the people that are setting the lines on our platform to be able to pull that information in and actually upload the selections that you're seeing on our platform. So it's evolved from one product into many. And I think the tech stack has to kind of match that, and those are the considerations that we kind of wrestle with now. Fast forward 6 years.
Okay, sure. So moving on to the next question. So starting off with Cantaloupe. So Cantaloupe offers both hardware and software solutions for the peerless solutions, right? Across multiple industry verticals. So do you think accelerating the tech stack would improve the growth of the company?
So absolutely, right? And I'll give you a few numbers. I'm sure everybody sitting in this room has their set of numbers with their business or where they work, right? I've got across 4 major platforms about 20 million lines of code. 20 million lines of code, okay? It's a lot, and it's been built up over the last 20 years or so. If you're a startup today, you probably get there in a year or 2. So legacy is getting created faster. And AI is actually going to accelerate that as well. It's going to create junk faster, not just useful, valuable code, right? So the need to accelerate the modernization of that tech stack is critical, because otherwise all you have armies of people, and even if you replace them with 10x engineers thanks to AI, you will still need 100x more of them, right? So it's a multiplying problem. What we did, and which I think may be instructive here, is we went on a journey of trying to figure out, well, how do we modernize critical portions of that platform? And started like anybody else would, right? We got many quotes from many partners, including the big 5. And even for just one platform, which is about 4 million lines of code, the numbers varied from anywhere between $15 to $20 million and 2 to 3 years. Right? So keep some of those numbers in the back of your mind. So then we went to this company called Quantitative Software Metrics, and for those of you who have a little bit of gray like I do, you probably remember the function point guys. They're the function point guys, right? They are the experts that are actually telling you what it'll really take. And they said, don't believe any of the system integrators. It'll actually take more like 5 years. And in 5 years, we'll probably be out of business if we were to go down that track, right? So we decided we need a different approach. And we looked at other clever approaches, including replacing portions with a modern tech stack, completely rewriting it. And we also found some tools, like vFunction is one that I would recommend people look at, which is an automated way to go from a monolith to microservices. And one of the best things we found about it was how it could instrument real-time our code and the transactions and what's being used and what's not. So there are newer, modern ways to accelerate that transition from an old stack to a new stack. Ignoring it is not an option. And for most businesses, putting armies of engineers to work on modernizing it is not an option either.
Thanks, Ravi. So moving on to Jay, it's the same question. So PrizePicks has been a sports analytics platform offering betting solutions, right? So do you think accelerating the tech stack would improve the growth of the company?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we view ourselves as a tech company first and foremost. We ran a very lean engineering operation for the first couple of years of the business. I mean, a lot of it relied heavily on myself, some other individual contributors that are responsible for a lot of the core functionality. And what we've realized is, obviously in a commodity kind of based market like ours, where there are a lot of sports books, there's a lot of daily fantasy platforms, what we think is going to win in the long run is actual product innovation, the best product, the best customer experience. We're seeing DraftKings, FanDuel spend absurd amounts of money in customer acquisition, and they probably won't ever break even on those customers like they say they will. So I think they're playing a short-term game. We're definitely playing a long-term game. And I think we were talking about this earlier, Ramesh. Because of that, we've put a huge emphasis on in-housing as much of the engineering, analytics, data science, data engineering functions into our business intelligence as well. So we've recently scaled up our engineering team and up to 50 full-time resources with plans to get to closer to 70 by the end of the year. Analytics is another 30, 40. And so we're building a lot of strategic IP internally that a lot of our competitors in the space are also working on. Specifically, I'm sure if there's sports bettors in the room, you guys have heard the nomenclature same game parlay thrown around a ton for the last couple of years. It's become the most popular kind of game variety that DraftKings, FanDuel, even us, are basically pushing now, and that's making multiple predictions in the same event, right? Is LeBron going to go over? Is Anthony Davis going to go over? And is Steph Curry going to go under his prediction tonight? And there's a lot of interesting challenges there. There's a lot of The difficulty in the past was how to price those events and the correlations. There's a lot of dependencies in those types of things, and so that's what we're very focused on: in-housing, building good strategic IP around that, making that available to our customer in the simplest way possible. Again, we're trying to build a product for the casual sports fan, so we want to make sure it's as dumbed down and as easy as possible for anybody to get in and get their hands dirty. So, short answer to your question: 100% believe that tech stack acceleration will benefit the business, and we're investing heavily in product engineering above everything else this year.
Sure. Earlier, I think, so me and Jay, we were talking about 5 years ago, it was the mobile solution, right? It was a native. I was in Android. Then React Native. Now it's Flutter. Tomorrow it could be something else, right? So every day the technology is evolving and it's changing. Okay. So moving on to, so we know that technology innovation is happening every day. Every day, every second, technology is evolving, right? So the question is, at what point do you think you would decide, okay, I would like to modernize or accelerate the tech stack? So starting with Ravi.
So for me, it becomes cases where the business needs to change quickly. Right, so instead of letting the tail wag the dog, a lot of times what I do is I look at places where it's an old tech stack maybe, but that business is not changing as rapidly, and so we sort of put wraps around it, circle it, and keep the lights on, and don't push the envelope in trying to accelerate it. Whereas if there is an area where the business is changing very rapidly and needs to pivot, the underlying logic of the business needs to change very rapidly, then we invest in either rewriting platforms or accelerating modernization of the tech stack that's underlying the platform. So it's really, that becomes the driver versus, hey, there's a new tech innovation available or a new, programming language available or AI available or a new way to do analytics available and let's run to it. I think that's, sometimes it can be chasing a shiny object.
Yeah, good, great answer. So Jay?
Yeah, I think very similar answer to Ravi. I would say, like, building on his last point, we'll try to stay away, honestly, from the new shiny object as much as possible because we've made those mistakes in the past. We've moved to a framework way too early. We moved to a new technology way too early. It's not ready for production, especially, again, we're serving millions of customers on a monthly basis, right? We can't afford to take those kinds of risks. So we tend to be a little bit slower in adopting anything new. Obviously, with the advent of AI and whatnot, I think those are things that we're trying to tie in operationally into the company as opposed to building them into our platform itself. I think, we'll see where that goes. But to Tim's point earlier, like, we're trying to turn our good engineers into great engineers. So, like, by default, everyone gets GitHub Copilot now. And I don't think the analytics team has written anything in the last 6 months without the help of that. So, I think it, I think, like, that's where our focus is. And we try to stay away from making premature moves, just because there's something new and shiny in the market. So.
Sure, great. Okay, so moving on to next question, right? So I know, like, in 90s and 80s and 90s, it used to be like COBOL, mainframe, and then in 2000, starting 2000, .NET, Java, JavaScript became popular, and then starting 2010, started talking about digital transformation, right? Serverless architecture and cloud, etc. And then after 2015, we started talking about automation, right? And cardless payments, right? And now we are talking about ChatGPT, AI, metaverse. So which technology do you think that would dominate for next decade, and why?
Well, I think we've talked almost enough about AI, but it's hard to pick anything else right now. AI is for sure the technology that I think will dominate in the next decade or so. Now, in terms of the generations of technology, the one thing I'll say is my experience is most of the times there's nothing wrong with the technology. It's just a bunch of engineers who want to go to the next big thing, right? And I can't tell you if I had a penny for every time somebody wanted to rewrite a platform in Scala when Scala was hot, remember that? And then wanted to rewrite something in, Angular isn't good enough anymore and we should go to this, and now, you should go to Flutter, and no, let's do React Native. So I think sometimes us technologists tend to chase shiny objects even more than marketing or product people do. And so just curtailing that and balancing that with the goals of a business is critical. But there is no doubt that AI will be the dominant technology and will offer new opportunities to accelerate businesses.
Jay, your takes on this?
Yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I think we all know what the answer is. I think building on Ravi's point, which is what's different this time around, because we've heard about AI time and time again. I think you could point pretty heavily, like the large language models we're dealing with and the transformer architectures. I think the big kind of keystone finding in 2018 that I think has unlocked a lot of this innovation with large language models. And I think the thing that it took me a little while to wrap my head around, and it happened recently, was it's not, the LLMs are not just bound to text-based predictions. Like that applies to images, it applies to video, it applies to anything you want it to. And that was again, pointing to the transformer kind of architecture that I think it was researchers at Google that wrote a paper about it in 2018. Like, I'm excited to see where that goes. I think it's impossible. I'd be lying if we were sitting up here and say we know what's going to happen in the next 5 years or even 6 months. So yeah, it's going to be crazy. I mean, I think these guys have touched on it. So excited to see what happens.
Great. So moving on to the next question. So sometimes people are used to current technology and current user experience, right? So when you accelerate the tech stack, so obviously there would be changes. It would evolve, and in terms of the user experience. So how would you convince people to upgrade their apps? So for example, your customers, right? How would you convince people saying that, okay, we are having an upgraded app, but sometimes few percentage of the people, they don't like it, and most of the people, they like it. So how do you convince your customers to upgrade your tech stack? I mean,
so it's funny. I do this every day, and I just actually came to this place from the NAMA show, which is our industry's biggest trade show that happens every year, and it's happening in the Georgia World Congress. And I actually launched a new product, which does picking for the warehouse. It's not a new problem; it's an existing problem, and there are solutions that are in place. But this is a brand new way of looking at it, using a tablet and a very different user interface to make it very efficient for somebody to go through and pick products and pre-kit them to take them to different locations. The trick that I always use is the same. Is technology in your face, and are you having to learn how to deal with technology, or is it behind the scenes, and is it really making your life better as a user, right? The right answer always needs to be option 2. So I challenge our UX people, product people, marketing people, technology people, whoever is getting inputs from customers. The technology needs to be invisible, needs to be behind the scenes, and needs to make things better and more efficient. So that would be my approach always.
Sure. Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think every decision we try to make at PrizePicks is always rooted in our mission and vision. And speaking of the mission, I think what we're trying to do is deliver a 6-star experience to customers when they come in and they're watching tonight's sports viewing experience, right? Whether it's putting real money predictions down on our game, hopping over to our Discord, which has over 300,000 people, and rooting alongside everybody else, or what we describe as our kind of a digital sports bar experience. I think all of our technology decisions come from trying to deliver that 6-star member experience. And so, when we talk about like accelerating the tech stack, I think it has to come from some kind of need that we're seeing from the user. So hopefully that convincing the user when that decision happens is not a hard conversation, because we know that they're already asking for it. We ran it through the proper product process, and then those technical decisions come after all of those things kind of fall in place. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next one. So we know that innovation and disruption are two sides of the same coin, right? So one guy said, stop being disruptive, right, and start being innovative. So do you agree with the statement? Why?
I think disruption gives innovation a purpose. To my mind, I don't want to do innovation for the sake of innovation, and in general, at least disruption is one of the purposes, maybe if not the only one.
Jay?
Yeah, for sure agree. I think like we view ourselves as the disruptor in the industry. I think like we're playing in a space where a lot of legacy operators, casino operators, brick and mortar guys are trying to get into the technology space, and you still see the same UIs 10, 20 years later. It's minus 130, plus 150 money line, right? What minus 3.5 for the spread? Most people don't know what that stuff means, and so when we started building the product, it was with a completely blank slate. Like, what should this look like for today's millennial or Gen Z sports fan? They shouldn't have to decipher what minus 150 means. It's just put down $50 to win $250, and so. Yeah, I mean, I think definitely agree with the statement, because I think we view ourselves in that role, and we're giving the big guys a run for their money.
So basically it's a disruptive innovation, right? Okay. So moving on to next one. So, talking about disruptive innovation, right? ChatGPT and AI tools are, as you know, like it's raising concerns about the technology's potential risks, and there could be misinformation too, right? And privacy, right? Dealing with privacy. So how do you emphasize the current and the future AI companies, the importance of ethical and responsible AI development?
I think the genie is out of the box here. Tim was expressing optimism, which I'd like to share. But on this, I'm a little bit more pessimistic. I think this is not going to be one where we just stub our toes. I think there'll be a little bit more of nose bleeding before we get our act together on this.
Yeah, I'd agree. I agree with what Tim says too. I mean, I think we'll see where things go. I think when you're dealing with technology this disruptive and it is touching the public sphere, I think there's going to have to be some level of regulation. If we're describing it as a public service, public good, just like everything else, like highways, like anything else that is a public good or public service, I think there's going to be some level of oversight. So we'll see. But I agree. I mean, the genie's out of the bottle, so we'll see what happens.
Okay. So moving on to the next one, I think that's the favorite one, right? So talking about the digital wallet, right, or the payment solutions. So company have started integrating Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as a payment solution, right? So do you think it is too early to integrate Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, considering Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is not currently considered as a real money by the feds or the Federal Reserve or US banks?
I think in general, and I was having a conversation with a gentleman here about the way payments happen and the way money flows needs to change. It's too inefficient, it's too expensive, it's too slow. And the blockchain and Bitcoin or crypto in general do offer a very viable alternative. When I was heading innovation at Bakkt, I got to know that space really, really well. Bakkt is one of the market leaders in that space. And came up with a very clever way to not write every transaction to the blockchain and hence make it faster and make it more cost efficient. They kind of by backing the crypto transactions with a bunch of dollars worth of crypto that they had, right? So that was one way. You'll see many different approaches come there. I think ultimately it's not just crypto, but more and more real-time payments that'll change the game in that whole space, and that needs to happen. It's one of those areas where, frankly, lobbies and vested interests have prevented the innovation that's already there from sufficiently becoming mainstream in this country and has made us lag behind other countries, including APAC and including Europe, etc. So,
Jay?
No, I don't think it's too early. I think the offshore sports books are some of the first parties to really push transacting with Bitcoin, Ethereum, obviously deposits, withdrawals. I think real-time payments is one of the big advantages you have to have. It's table stakes for sports books or daily fantasy platforms nowadays, whether it's ACH or whether it's crypto. So it's on our roadmap. We'll be adding, the ability to deposit or withdraw via Bitcoin. But obviously we have to take care of things like Apple Pay, Venmo, the more mainstream payment methods first. And yeah, I mean, I think like in our space, it's a must-have to have as many options as you can to transact money in and money out. And so we're always looking at adding additional methods. I think the big thing that we have to worry about is KYC, AML considerations when it comes to crypto, and that's a whole different ballgame, obviously, with something like blockchain. So that's an interesting nuance that we'll be dealing with soon.
Sure. And one last question. And I think it's not my question, but it's a simple question, right? So talking about the tech stack acceleration, two things are very important, right? So one is the process, other one is the people, right? What do you think is the effective process you have in place in Cantaloupe that can accelerate that helps you to accelerate the tech stack?
So we have an enterprise architecture. Like there are people and there's good leadership. There is also a rigorous process of reviewing what opportunities are available in terms of tech stack that we can take advantage of. Where in our tech stack do we have severe pain points, and then sort of prioritize it. And like anything else, what you want to do is 100 things, and what you can do, it's, we joke about champagne taste and beer money, and so the prioritization becomes critical in making stuff happen on the ground.
Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it, you touched on it, Ramesh. It's process and people. We're very fortunate to have really good senior leadership on the engineering side, product side, and they've put together a very good process in terms of how to vet proposals, trade-offs, and most of the time those things come from the business side or the product side. Like we're not making unnecessary changes if we don't have to. We're not trying to rock the boat if we don't have to. We try to stay away from the shiny new object as much as we can, but I think it comes down to having the right leadership on that side of the house that's been there, done that. They know how to run these processes and scale a platform the size that we're at. So kudos goes to our team, honestly.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, gentlemen. Open to questions?
Hey guys, I was talking with Ramesh actually earlier today about the architecture that we've been able to deploy using platforms like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. Obviously a lot of benefits of just time getting to market without a big capital expense up front. What are some of the downsides that you've seen of not controlling the server hardware yourself?
I honestly see zero downside. I think if you're starting a business today, there is no reason I can think of to do it anywhere but the cloud.
So actually, I was telling him that the Netflix, or starting off with banks, Truist, or Citibank, all are in cloud. They have very sensitive data, so they feel that cloud is the way to go solution. Jay?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I don't think it makes sense to try to manage your own infrastructure. I will say, for us, where DevOps is a very interesting challenge, and we're dealing with very heavy bursts in a short period of time, we have entertained maintaining our own bare metal machines in certain geographies. So there's a newer company in the space called Vulture, who actually has a data center here in Atlanta. We're looking at taking advantage of their bare metal machines, but we're at the point where we need to start optimizing beyond what's available out of the box. The other thing I think our engineers do a really good job of and have warned against from the get-go is avoiding vendor lock-in. So when you set up your infrastructure, one thing AWS likes to do is try to keep you in their ecosystem and make it impossible to switch out. That's one thing that we've avoided from the get-go, and we keep our options kind of flexible if we want to go to AWS or if we want to move from DigitalOcean to Vulture or whoever it is. So I'm glad we were kind of able to avoid that common pitfall early on.
Hello. This way.
Yeah.
Ravi and Jay, thank you. I agree. I think the cloud is the right way to go. I work for AWS. All right. Yeah, bring the volume. I think we need it. It's secure too. So my question is on the product side is how do you decide, like you mentioned, Ravi, that first you're doing vending machines and smart ops or smart software on the vending, and now you went for picking. And I ran the biggest network for Amazon, so I exactly understand what you mean. But how do you decide that product? I mean, you know, it is so vast. Who drives it, or what is your disruption mentality?
So in our case, we've got multiple forums, but there is a product management leadership, and we also have many customer forums. Like I have a president's club, a group of customers I spend every quarter 2 days dedicated off-site and really get in the bunker on what product market fit looks like for us and what are the new things we should develop, and that informs our roadmap quite a bit. In general, it's what makes sense in the market and what makes economic sense for us to invest in, and then marry the two. And frankly, for me, Tim's session was really, really useful because he reminded me of something I should know about around no sustainable competitive advantage. I'm taking that one home. So that was really good to remember. But I think it boils down to continuously adding what's now required and what also can deliver an ROI for our company.
So Ravi, earlier you mentioned encouraging your employees to use ChatGPT in their workplace. How would you kind of prevent or avoid sensitive company data leaks? Because you have companies like Samsung and different financial institutions, Bank of America, JP Morgan, that are restricting or completely banning the use of ChatGPT in their development team. So how would you kind of work around avoiding or preventing those sensitive data leaks?
I really wish you hadn't asked me that question. Because whatever I answer, I'm in trouble with my audit committee and the compliance committee and our chief legal officer. I could go on about a number of people. There's really no good answer to that. What we are doing is, at a network level, we are ring fencing our sensitive data and our crown jewels, so as to say. So that crown jewels approach is useful to say, all right, can't control everything, can't restrict everything. You want people to use this as a tool and get more productive. How do you ring fence things around it? And that's the approach we've taken. I think I would be stupid to say it's perfect, but we're trying to get ahead of it as much as we can.
My question for both of you is, do you have a feature or an idea that you would love to implement, but for any reason you cannot do right now?
I wouldn't say we can't do it right now. In our case, we've been hyper-focused on one product for the last 5 or 6 years and trying to get that to, again, achieve product market fit, get it to a critical scale, which we feel like we've done now. Some of the discussions we're having internally strategically is how do we start expanding out horizontally and maybe spinning up some new products, new game types, new variations for our community. And so I think while we do that, we want to be very intentional and very careful about how we do it from a product standpoint so that we don't waste 6 months building something that nobody's going to use. And we see too many companies kind of fall into the same pitfall, again and again. So I think rather than not being able to do it, I think we're just being very careful about now finally kind of expanding horizontally and standing something brand new up from the ground up, essentially.
See, with us, the issue is less about a new product. It's more about what it takes to stage it through. So the barrier tends to be when we have product ideas, which we have several of, how do we roll it out to our base of our network and our customer footprints? And just to put that into context, because we are self-service businesses, I have point of sale terminals that we manage, and we have 1.16 million of them. Just to put that into context, if you're a Starbucks, you probably have less than 100,000 point of sales that you're operating. Walmart, Target don't come even close, right? So it's a very complex network. And so when I roll out a feature, I need to make sure that it could work across those, and it becomes really hard. So that tends to be the bottleneck, is to scale it and make it meaningful with our kind of footprint.
Awesome. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.